Thing I can honestly say, America is a country that has never lived without slavery. Slavery has always existed in America. Right after the slaves were released in the South, the first thing they did was try to draft ways to keep you enslaved. Okay? They had to do something because they knew they could not do without the black labor. So, what did they do after slavery? They came up with sharecropping, and we know sharecropping was nothing but slavery. In many cases, sharecroppers didn't even get paid. They would cheat them out of their money, and they would virtually end up with either very little to no money. So sharecropping was nothing but slavery. And prisons immediately went up all over the place. Prison camps, all types of prisons all across the South and even up here in the North, because that was a clear sign they were never going to let you really go. Number two, anything you did was a crime, but it does not reflect upon a crime when whites did it. This is why all you have to do, if you want to know what's going on with laws, go back and look at the slave codes, black codes, and pig laws that were never abolished in this country. I even asked a teacher in school, why were the slave laws still on the books? And her response, this was a white female teacher, oh, they're there, but nobody uses that anymore. That's a damn lie. Everything that's happening to black people today, go back and look at yesterday's slave laws that were written centuries ago, and you will see it matching perfectly with everything going on with black people today. Anybody that tells you there are no slaves in America, they are being dishonest, and that person is a hardcore racist. This is why after slavery, what were they putting you in jail for? Anything you don't see white people going to jail for equally, you know you are just being enslaved all over again. When the black sharecroppers tried to form a union in Arkansas, they got lynched 253. See, but white folks after slavery formed unions to keep black people out of jobs because, see, they had no skills. The slaves had all the skills, they had none. So, how did they block you out from getting certain jobs? They formed the union. They didn't go to jail. But as soon as blacks wanted to form a union, it became a death sentence. That's how you know you're not free. That's how you know. And what did they start doing? Demanding to see your papers on the spot. So any white person could randomly walk up to you and demand to see your papers, or you go to jail. See, that's the kind of stuff they were doing to get you back into slavery, which is known today as their prison. You don't commit the most crimes. They just came out with a crafty way to keep you enslaved. And many people see this in the world, by the way, and they know this is true as well. But racism is so rampant in the US, they have to keep you believing everything is your fault when it really isn't. Everything was designed and set up to keep you in an enslaved state. Again, if you don't believe it, go back and look at the slave laws, black codes, and pig laws. All written to keep you enslaved. They even wrote the words that you will be a slave forever in America. Now, what is another thing they used to get you on? Bogus shit. Vagrancy. If that's the case, everybody in America would be in jail for vagrancy. They got you for laughing out loud in public. You went to jail for that. Black folks went to jail for that. Talking out loud in public. You went to jail for that. See, these people, this is why they don't ever want to let go of their leverage over black people. You know, they always want to keep you in a state where you're being subjugated by them. And Rosa Parks showed us if you don't go to the back of the bus, you got arrested for that too. Anything. You know, they wrote those laws in a way it's just illegal for you to be black in America. Just you being a black person in America makes you a criminal. Why do you think they keep telling you you're criminals? Because they wrote it in their laws centuries ago, ladies and gentlemen. If a white person and a black person were walking on the same sidewalk and the black person did not cross the street, you went to jail. If you were out past a certain time, you went to jail. You see, you went for all kinds of bogus reasons. Again, they had to mastermind a way to keep you in jail. Now, what do they do now? You're resisting arrest, and they always yelling that out without telling you what crime you committed. A traffic stop in America for a black person can result in you going to prison over a bunch of bullshit or you being put to death over a bunch of nothing. Again, they do this to us because we are still viewed as their property. Open your eyes and realize what's going on. You know, I'm not worried about coons. There is nothing that's going to wake a coon up. So all I can say is to them, cooning will not save you. A coon will go to prison just as fast as a rebel black person. There is no distinction in this country. So this article came out September 9th, 2017, and I will leave the link to it in the description box. But this, ladies and gentlemen, this prison system in America is slavery. This is why this garbage was in their constitution, written the way that it was, because they never were genuine about ending slavery in America. If you were, you wouldn't have put no garbage like that in your constitution. The fact that you put it in there said it made it very clear you were never parting with slavery, period. It's not all these crimes committed. It's not. This is why every single year there's a bunch of black people being released from prison that's been in there for 10, 20, and 30 years that didn't commit the crime that you put them in there for. How did they get in there? 9 times out of 10, all white juries. All white juries should be banned in America because they have been proven to be the most flawed juries in the world. If you weren't heavily flawed, you would not see a whole rash of black people every single year being released because they never should have been in there in the first place. This happens every year. I haven't seen one year go by where a bunch of black people were not released from prison because they were innocent and had no business being in there in the first place. It happens every year, and it's been happening like that for centuries in America. Black people to this day are still being framed for crimes they have not committed. Still being framed. White people commit the crime, point the finger at black folks. You've been doing that since black people been in this country. That's been going on for centuries. And we've seen it as in the news with Joshua Witt. Fool gonna stab himself and then talk about some black man came along and did it. And if it wasn't for the surveillance camera, they probably would have believed him. We got plenty of cases all throughout the year of whites committing the crime and then pointing the finger at somebody black. Look at all of the white men that are raping out here, and the courts are just setting them free. Black man rape, he got to go to jail for the rest of his life. All of the disparity in the prison sentencing tells you slavery is alive and well in America. That's why it's happening. Cops now framing black men, women, and children. That's why the majority of the cops are white. They have to keep you enslaved in America, black people. They can't do it if they're not the ones running the legal system. And then trying to fabricate that you're breaking the law. That's why you got to go to jail. But we see the disparity. White people will do the same exact thing and get little to no prison. Hell, they let George Zimmerman go for murder. They won't let your black butt go for murder. The disparities are there to keep you enslaved. Now, even look at the circumstances when they find out, in many cases, the majority of the time, a black man is innocent. Look at how many decades it takes them to get you out. Look at all that free labor they done got out of you before they figured out you had no business being in jail. These people are in jail 10, 20, 30 years for crimes they never committed. Who put them in jail? Go back. All white juries. All white juries are not peers to black people. Okay, so you saying jury of your peer is just complete bullshit, and it's a lie. There is no all white jury in this country, even whites on a jury, that is a peer to a black person, because the racial disparities in how we live and all of your white privilege makes you in a position where you are never peers to black people. Period. You're just not. I mean, you can say jury of your peers. White folks are never peers to black people, period. Nor have you ever been peers to black people. Not with white supremacy in place. You're not. If you were unemployed, ladies and gentlemen, according to the slave codes, that was a crime. You went to jail if they walked up to you. And this is how easy, this is why many white people have the mindset that they can put you in jail for anything because it's a whole history of it. If they walked up to you after slavery and asked if you have a job, if you said no, you got put into prison labor. Why do you think many of them still have this mindset that they can put any black person in jail anytime they want? Why do you think they have that mindset? That comes from centuries of them doing just that to black people. And then they pass it down through the generations. Just what they've done to us over the last decade, we should get reparations. Black people shouldn't have to pay taxes up in this bitch either. We built this country. We shouldn't have to, we don't owe you nothing as far as taxes are concerned. We shouldn't have to pay your ass nothing. Pay your own taxes. Slavery in the U.S. prison system. If you want to find an example of modern day slavery, look no further than the U.S. prisons, which is the truth. And it was designed that way. Right after slavery, prisons went up. Today marks 1 year since the largest prison labor strike in U.S. history. More than 24,000 prisoners across 29 prisons in 12 states protested against inhumane conditions, timing it around the anniversary of the Attica prison uprising, a prisoner strike, now 46 years old. The violent uprising originated from prisoner rebelling against overcrowded cells, unsanitary conditions, medical neglect, and abuse. Because you are slaves. They wrote it in their constitution. From Attica to the strike led by the Incarcerated Workers Organizing Committee last year, these protests draw attention to an ugly truth. Prisoner abuse run rampant, and it has extended into modern day versions of slavery. Last year's strike organized described slavery-like conditions in prisons in the nationwide call to action. Now, the average Caucasoid will say, well, if you don't want to be in prison, don't commit the crime. But that's the thing. They're not committing the crime. And we can see this in the police stops. Get out of your car. Get out of your car. Resisting arrest, resisting arrest. We see how it's done today. You're blatant with it. You're not even trying to hide that you're just making shit up as you go along when it comes down to black people. You ain't going by no laws. This is why when you watch a cop, they are very careful with white people. They handle white people with kid gloves. But then when they come to the black population, they're just slave overseers. They're coming to occupy a community. They don't show respect towards the black population. We've seen it millions of times in the videos, in the differences in how they speak to black people that get stopped and how they talk to white people that get stopped. We have seen white people spit on cops, hit cops, shoot at cops, cuss cops out, and hardly nothing ever happens to them. A black person could just say, "Why did you stop me?" and they get a bullet in the head. So we see the disparities. There's no point in you coming and arguing round and round with anybody. And what you're doing ain't policing. It's just what it was intended to be, slave overseeing. The Federal Bureau of Prisons now runs a program called Federal Prison Industries because prison is a corporation, ladies and gentlemen, that pays inmates under $1 an hour. The program generates 500 million in sales in 2016, with little of that cash being passed down to prison workers. Slavery. Stateside, where much of U.S. addictions to mass incarceration, and they're right, the United States is addicted to mass incarceration, and nobody incarcerates their citizens more than the U.S. Again, and they're right, this is another addiction America has because, see, America is addicted to slavery. Stateside, where much of the U.S. addiction to mass incarceration lies, is no different. California's prison labor program is expected to produce some 232 million in sales in 2017. That's just one state. See, this is why they want to keep stacking black people into these jails because, see, they done set it up as a slave labor camp to make the corporations rich and sell their products in stores all across America. So again, they're forcing you into a slavery condition in order to make profit. These exploited laborers are disproportionately African American and Latino, a demographic status quo resulting from draconian sentencing and other criminal justice policies ransacking minority communities across the US. Okay? The fact that they're doing this in their prisons, in their policing, in their laws, in their courts, it's no different, ladies and gentlemen, than a slave being placed into a court to go on trial and then turned out to be lynching. Except for now, they're cutting courts out using the cops and just killing you right there on the spot. Just like the cop that got caught in Cobb County said, "We only kill black people. Look at the videos. We only kill black people," right? We know what you're saying. And everything he said is matching up to what's going on today. Slavery. And we need to start calling it that, ladies and gentlemen. Stop calling it prison. Stop calling it mass incarceration. Call it what it is. Call it mass slavery. Call it slavery. Don't call it nothing else. If they want to call it by other names, let them call it by other names. But we as black people, we call it what it is. Slavery. Slavery. And keep saying it. If they don't like it, then don't do it. Plain and simple. African Americans are incarcerated at a rate 5 times higher than that of whites. In states like Virginia and Oklahoma, 1 in every 14 or 15 African American men are put in prison. Now, you see how they're handling the heroin addicts. Oh, it's a public health issue. I don't see no point in them going to jail. It just doesn't make any sense for them to be in prison. That has not worked. Well, if it hasn't worked, Why are crack addicts from the 80s and 90s still sitting in prison and you claim it doesn't work? Why are they still there? Because those folks were black. It was okay to put them in prison along with family members, or a lot of people that had nothing to do with the fact that they were dealing crack out of a house, but they mastermind a plan to enslave everybody. So everyone in a crack house, even if they were not even aware crack was even in the house, all had to go to jail. Because why? Why? Because that is how you keep slavery going in the US. You arrest black people at disproportionate levels that you don't arrest anyone else. Again, call it what it is: slavery. You're being placed into slavery in the US. The US cannot live without slavery, and it has never lived without slavery in centuries. We lock people of color up at alarming rates. We put them back into slavery. Corporation gains. The story is an old American tradition. Slavery is a tradition in America. It's their heritage, ladies and gentlemen. Slavery is their heritage. Throughout history, our nation has successfully put back corporate greed, but private corporations have always found new ways to ramp up enormous wealth from, and it should say black labor because that's what it primarily is. It says cheap labor, but I'm going to say black labor. The historical circumstances following the abolition of slavery provide a necessary context to understand how corporations function in a de facto replacement for slavery. No, it is slavery. Although the U.S. Constitution 13th Amendment prohibited slavery and involuntary servitude, it made an exception, a loophole, which was put there intentionally to always keep you a slave. This is why the black population is expected to always be subservient to the white community because of what is written in the Constitution. A loophole for punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, which made prison labor possible, slave labor. That's all. Following the Civil War, the Southern economy was in shambles. Now you're getting ready to learn why you had to stay in slavery all this time. See, after slavery, let's face it, white people did not work in this country during slavery. It's a fact. It's recorded in history. There's no point in you coming here trying to argue that you worked hard. No, you didn't. You did nothing. That's why you sit in black people's face saying those words to us, because you got a history of doing nothing. Okay? That's why you're doing it. Number two, as soon as the slaves left the plantation, the South went into economic chaos because they can't do it without black labor. Just like you can't do nothing without black labor today in those prisons making all these products out in your market that you're looking at today. White people could not pick up the reins in the South and continue the wealth down there. They couldn't do it, ladies and gentlemen. They couldn't do it. This is why prison camps and prisons went up immediately after slavery, because they had to find a way to entrap you into doing the slave labor all over again. They couldn't do it. See, when they talk all that crap about they don't need us, and oh, they got the high IQs and they do everything better than black people. No, they don't. Go back and look at this. Once the slaves walked away from the plantation, the white people in the South, everything collapsed for them financially. They couldn't go out there and do that work themselves. And we see how they burn and die from skin cancer. During slavery, there was no sunscreen on the shelves of these stores. They couldn't go out there and do that work and maintain those plantations. That's why everything collapsed in the South. See, this is history they never want to teach you. They want you to believe they can sustain themselves without black people. And ladies and gentlemen, the prison system should prove to you they can't. They can talk all this shit, run to KKK groups and white nationalist groups. It still don't diminish the fact that they can't do anything to maintain their system without the help of a lower class like black people and Mexicans and anybody else that got melanin in their skin that they can get a hold of to do the work, because they simply can't be out in the sun doing the labor with that skin. It's a fact. And we see this as a fact even with sunscreen on the shelves. All right, so now a part of their slave labor in America, the source needed, the convicted lease system was invented. States leased out their convicts to industries and plants to work in locations such as railroads, coal mines, plantations, and entrepreneurs bought and sold these leases. Okay, so they leased out labor, and they did this even during slavery. Somebody could come and rent a few of your slaves for getting some labor done at their location and then give you your slaves back. This is no different. It's no different. With little capital investment required and no need to care for the health of the prisoners, the system of economic exploitation became highly profitable for businesses and states, and even cheaper than slavery. Did you hear what I said? This is why they keep grabbing black people up for BS reasons to get you in jail. And another thing that you can catch them in lying. Now, they said black people are the most violent, but look at the prison statistics. Most black people are in prison for non-violent crimes. If you were the most, if you were indeed the most violent, this would be reflected in the prison system. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to tell you it's not. Most black people are in jail for non-violent crimes. And they know this. This is why Jeff Sessions want to nail you on marijuana. See, they can't get you on the most violent crimes. So they have to look at the things that black people like and then make a big deal out of making that illegal, like you smoking pot and going to jail. If you were indeed committing the most violent crimes, then it would be reflected, and it is not. You are in there for non-violent drug crimes where you didn't harm anybody but yourself. But these people are still yelling up in your face that you're so most violent. If you were, we would be able to see this in the statistics, and we simply don't. It's not there. Another thing they are fabricating, just like you being 13% of the population, that and you being the most violent, are right now the two biggest lies that they're running rampantly saying around this country. For example, in 1883, convict leasing provided Alabama with 10% of its revenue, 73% in 1898. So again, the prison labor that most black men are kidnapped off the streets and placed back into slavery through the prison system. Go look at how much the state is making profiting off of the prison labor. Go look. And it's also, again, proof America cannot live without slavery in the past and even in modern day. American cannot, if black people walked away from America right now, this country would be gone overnight. In fact, it would be gone within hours after we walked away. So it is your labor as a slave in prison that makes America work. It's fueling the economy. It's providing all kinds of money to the state. Okay, least convicts were treated abysmally, with death rates 10 times higher than prisoners in states that did not employ least convict labor. Secret graveyards, secret graveyards, ladies and gentlemen. And these are really just graveyard mass graves that are near the prisons. And yes, they do exist in America. Secret graveyards contain bodies of prisoners who had been tortured and beaten to death. A viability of the convict lease system required that, listen to this, black people be returned to their former status as a source of labor, slavery. Hence, the black codes were intact to suppress the rights of the recently emancipated African Americans and criminalize them for minor offenses such as vagrancy. What did I say? Under the vagrancy laws, any black person under the protection of a white person could be swept up by the system for simply loitering, which is another BS crime. as black people were rounded up in this manner to provide a source of nearly free labor. Remember, they paid the prisoners pennies on the dollar. Nearly free labor. Today's prison labor is a $1 billion industry. The prisons are on the stock market, ladies and gentlemen. That's how serious they are about the prison industry in America. It's on the stock market. It's there because this is also America's bread and butter. America will collapse without black people. They can keep saying they won't, but when you look at the numbers of what black people are generating, look at all the industries that black people are strong in: music, sports, and because America won't let go of slavery, prison. All of those industries are generating top dollar in this country. Why? Because of its black people. White intelligence is not fueling the economy. High IQs are not fueling the economy. Black people are. We are their economy, ladies and gentlemen. We are. And the corporate beneficiaries of these new slavery include some of the largest corporations and most widely known brands. For example, Walmart has purchased produce farms. So when you go into Walmart and you see all of um, their things that, because they now, you can now do all of your supermarket shopping in Walmart. Ladies and gentlemen, that's coming from the prison labor. That's coming from the prison labor. Okay? And just think about it. If they're growing produce can be canned and jarred and sold on your market. So it's attached to many things, not just picking vegetables and that's it. Okay? So all of the produce that's being sold in your local Walmart is coming from your prison labor slaves, black people, where women prisoners face bad working conditions, inadequate medical care, and very low pay. Workers flipping burgers and frying French fries for minimum wage at McDonald's, where uniforms that were manufactured by prison laborers, slaves. So every time you walk into a fast food restaurant and you're looking at the uniforms that the people have on, it's not just McDonald's, it's really virtually all of them. All of that has been made in prison. Again, blacks in prison are fueling the American economy. They can't live without you, ladies and gentlemen. I don't care how much they call you a nigger. I don't care how much they keep trying to say you got a low IQ and can't do nothing. They can't fuel their economy without you. Period. White people are not fueling the economy. Black labor is fueling America's economy. Let me go on. Further, Unicor manages 83 factories and more than 12,000 prison slaves who earn as little as 23 cents an hour working at call centers. So think about that. The next time you are talking to a call center agent on the phone, you may be very well talking to someone that is sitting in prison. It's more, ladies and gentlemen. Manufacturing items such as military bodyguard, done by slave labor in prisons. White people ain't doing this work. Black people are. That's why they're mass incarcerating you. Let me go on. And in the past years, defective combat helmets. In 2013, federal inmates made $100 million worth of military uniform. So now think about this when you go into fast food restaurants all around this country. Those uniforms were made in the jails. Everything you see the military with, those things were made by slaves in jail. But these people are looking you in the face and telling you, well, nobody's a slave in America. They are lying. And you can let them know this the next time they try to raise the fact that there's no slaves in America. Those slaves are fueling the American economy. Without mass incarceration, ladies and gentlemen, there would be no America. It's a fact. All right, let's go on. Unicor has also provided prison labor, slave labor, in the past to produce Patriot missile parts for defense contractors, Raytheon and Lockheed Martin, and parts for others such as Boeing and General Dynamics. Parts for planes, helicopters, missiles. So if it wasn't for the prison labor, all of the um, military vehicles, helicopters, planes, even commercial planes would not be up in the air today. So now let's keep looking. Let's see what else is being done in the slave camps in America. Corporations such as Starbucks, AT&T, Target, and Nordstrom have also profited from slave labor at some point in the past as well. Some critics oppose the characterization of the U.S. prison system as a slave labor camp. Well, they can oppose it, but what makes it different? Nothing. Nothing. They can oppose, you know what it is? They don't want you exposing their evil. That's what it is. Every time you expose the evil that goes on in this country, they want to silence you. And I want you to always notice one thing. Whenever America gets accused of any type of racism, they always grab a white man or woman to argue the whole thing down out in public on TV. But when you go and look at the actual data, it is slavery. It is. And just looking at the actions of the cops, you don't have to do anything wrong in America to land in prison. That's another thing that's said all the time. Oh, if you don't commit the crime, you don't have to commit a crime in America. And America has absolutely no problem jailing innocent people. And we see this every year when folks are released after being in there for decades for crimes they didn't do. So America has no issue with putting innocent people in jail. Never had that problem. This is why during after slavery they were putting you in there for not having a job and vagrancy, because they have no problem jailing innocent people in this country. Okay, some critics, so I already read that, so let me move on. For example, James Kilgore argues that slave labor is infrequently used, which is a lie. All right, all of these industries would not be involved in the prison system if it was infrequent. So it's just another person out here putting a bunch of lies out in public. Identifying multinational corporations that profit from it loses sight in its key issues behind mass incarceration. Kilgore is full of shit. Don't listen to him. Okay. Kilgore is correct in his analysis that a lack of economic opportunity coupled with draconian laws result in a perverse private incentive to drive up mass incarceration. Well, the incentive is money. I mean, there's really no other incentive for the devil to need. The devil just need to know they're going to make a lot of money at your expense. Then they have no problem snatching up and kidnapping people all off the streets of America to put you in there in the prisons to do their labor. See, everything is motivated by money. Slavery was motivated by money. They can't do that work out in that baking hot sun, even with sunscreen on. They can't be out there from sun up to sundown, not unless they want to die. We should enhance employment options for former inmates to reduce. Yeah, well they don't do that. That's a good point right here. Once people are returned back out in society, they go back to crime because they can't get a job. And that person ultimately ends back up in prison. Okay? So that's really what happens, where you see, people become institutionalized and they just keep going back to prison because they don't know any other life. It's hard to survive in America without a job. And they make sure they make it very difficult for, in most cases, black men when they get out of prison, where they can't get a job because it's okay for them to discriminate if you're black and you've been in prison, but a white man that has gone to prison, no matter what his crime was, he can get another chance. That second chance is rarely extended to a black man, and in many cases, the women as well. And that's all. And ladies and gentlemen, that's a setup too, because they know if they don't employ you, you're going to end up back in prison, aka slavery. Okay, it's to keep you a slave. If they don't give you a job, they get to keep you as a slave. Okay, okay. However, this does not mean that corporations do not profit from prisons, slaves, and slave labor today. It is obscene that this still happens. It still happens because they are profiting. The Trump administration reversing the Obama era order to phase out private prisons and enticing the new law of order policies to increase arrest and fill these prisons will only increase opportunity for Trump's corporate donors and their many investments in mass incarceration. You hear that, ladies and gentlemen? There are rich people heavily invested in keeping you as slave labor in prison. Slavery is alive and well. Exploiting slave labor is consistent with this troubling trend. And that's again, snatching, getting the cops to dog out the black neighborhood, you walking along minding your business, and here they come to confront you, to throw you down on the ground, arrest you, and put you back into slavery. You driving along in your car, they come along, stop you, won't tell you why you were stopped, tell you to step out the car, and then start screaming over and over, you're resisting arrest. That's a kidnapping. That's nothing more than a modern day kidnapping. That's what they were um, put in place to do, kidnap black people and take you back to the plantation. Over a century and a half since the abolition of slavery, the dreaded institution still lives on in another dressed up form, taking advantage of constitutional loophole. Corporate profiteers continue the modern day version of the convict lease system. In the land of the free, America has never been the land. America is a slave nation. That's all it's ever been. It's a slave nation. In fact, America should be synonymous with slavery. It really should be. This is a slave nation. It was built on slavery, and it continues to fuel the American economy in modern day. Again, if America opened up the prisons and let everybody go, America would collapse overnight. They can't let you go because they can't live without the black labor. Okay, in the land of the free, the dollar still takes precedence over human rights, and that which can be monetized and exploited for profit will be regardless of ethical or moral considerations. This ain't no moral nation. There ain't a thread of moral in America. Once again, race, criminal justice, and capitalism have joined forces to deprive captive black and brown bodies of their human rights. That sentence should be on a billboard. In the age of Trump and hardliner Attorney General Jeff Sessions, the return to law and order just means mass incarceration for black people. That's all it means. And a war on drugs signals a reversal of progress the U.S. was making. Well, you just got to understand, if you look at the whole history of America, you can understand why mass incarceration continues to live. All right. Now, they're claiming you are criminals and the most violent. Those slaves that you had on plantation, what was their crime? Being black? They didn't commit no crime. They didn't do anything to the white race. That's why you got to make all kinds of shit up today, because technically black people have never done anything to you that warrants us to be treated the way that we're treated. So then you just go into making a whole bunch of shit up and then saying, well, that's why we treat you like, no, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. You have no reason for mistreating us for centuries. So you do what you always do, you make shit up. And that's what you got a history of doing that. Just like all of your advantages are just a bunch of shit you sat around and made up. You have no real physical advantage over black people. If you did, you wouldn't be clearing out the gun stores all over the place all the time, because you don't have that advantage. So, ladies and gentlemen, just know the words law and order from the Trump administration is just code words for mass incarceration. And that's all it really is. And they're all in on it, from the cops all through the legal system and to your big corporations all around America. It's all tied together. The anniversary of last year's prison strike, slave strike, was a chilling reminder that one need not point to authoritarian regimes in distant countries to find examples of blatant labor rights violation. If you want to find slavery in the US, look no further than its penitentiaries, jails, and detention centers, where the consequences of being locked up extends much further than doing time. America is a slave nation, and it always will be a slave nation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is why they can't let you go. They talk all that go back to Africa. But if they really did let you go back to Africa, America would be gone. Black people make America what it is in the past, and today we still make this country what it is. America cannot live without black people. This is why after slaves were released from the plantation, the South collapsed economically. They had to find ways to get you back, and that's when they came up with prison. That's why prisons exist today, because they had to come up with a way to keep your slave labor working for them and making their money. They can't make money without it. All the centuries white people have been in America, and they still haven't figured out any way of making it on their own. That pretty much diminishes that high IQ, doesn't it? Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. And if you can make a donation to my hurricane fund, I would really deeply appreciate it. Right now, they're $72, and I really need to raise more in order to help the people down in Florida. I want to be able to help them because there's still a lot of price gouging going on during this hour down in slavery after Hurricane Irma. And it's amazing how a black person just walking along, minding their own business, is a crime, and they can go to jail just for doing that act. But these businesses that are price gouging and taking the advantage of people going through a hard time, they get to go on like That's not a crime. That's not viewed as a crime. Nobody's going to round them up and arrest them. But what they're doing is criminal. Please leave your comment and subscribe. And if you can donate, please do. Peace, family.